So what about romantic spiritual relationships? This is always the thing that when you meet the newfound yogi who's just found the Eastern traditions or fell in love with the idea of yoga, the next thing they want is a partner who's able to share all their ideals, see the world just as they do, commit to a vegetarian diet, study the yamas and the niyamas every morning at dawn together. This happens a lot, and it's pretty common. If you have read my book, Kriya Yoga, Vichara, there is a little section in there where I talk about my own personal relationships and how that went. In previous videos, I mentioned how when I first got involved in Kriya Yoga, I took to it very quickly, and as I've mentioned in other videos, I've had a tendency to be a bit of a fanatic about how I approach different aspects of my life. And so being young and in my very late teens, early 20s, it came to mind that if my partner wasn't as committed as I wasn't interested in getting up at 5 a.m. and meditating for an hour and a half, even though I didn't know what I was doing at the time, well, then there was a problem. And I made sure to make that very clear that that wasn't going to fly. And a few years later, I had brought it up with my teacher, Roy, and he waved me away and said, leave her alone. Let her find her own way, do her own thing. And sure enough, that was probably the best approach. So even in my relationship, my marriage, we still meditate. We don't do it at the same time. We don't sit around and read the Bhagavad Gita together. We don't even really talk about spirituality together. We approach our spirituality separately. But it is true that we do share similar views overall. Not all of them, but a good deal of them. So we have to be very cautious when we're getting involved in yoga and meditation and we start to have an idea that we want to have a spiritual partner. Well, as we talked about with spiritual friendships, spiritual partnerships are really about, are you able to support each other on your path in life? It doesn't mean you have to talk about the same things, do the same things. One of you can be a Catholic, the other can be a Buddhist. One of you can be Jewish, the other can be pagan, whatever it might be, as long as you're able to respect each other's personal ideals. And it would be helpful if you shared somewhat similar notions. For example, paganism and Christianity can work very well together because when it comes time to celebrate Christmas, well, the pagans can celebrate solstice. Same thing with Easter. The Christians can celebrate Easter, and the pagans can celebrate, is it Oster? I don't really remember how to pronounce that very well. So sometimes you get some overlap. But at the end of the day, what really matters is, are both of you able to respect each other's paths? Are you able to say, yes, in the morning you need to get up and meditate. And yes, in the evening you're going to go somewhere and pray. And I'm going to read the Bhagavad Gita, and you're going to go read some other scripture. I'm going to go on retreat with this Zen Buddhist teacher, and you're going to go to a monastery to study whatever it might be. If you're able to love each other and respect each other and realize that you have your own personal connection with divine consciousness, and you can support the individual in the work that they do, you can support the person in their health, you can support the person if they get sick, whatever it might be, as long as there is love there and you're able to support each other, that is a spiritual romantic relationship. If you want to explore, tantric sexuality, well, good luck with that. It's really hard to find someone who actually knows what they're talking about in that regard. But if you have to have a partner that will explore it with you, well, that could be a problem. But then again, we'll get into that when we talk about sexuality in the next section. But when it comes to your spiritual path and meditation, your meditation path, all that matters to have a spiritual, romantic relationship is, number one, that you love each other. Number two, that you care about each other. Number three, that you can respect each other's ways of thinking and tradition and realize that you don't have to think, be, and do the same things or be the same way in order to have a successful marriage, a successful spiritual relationship. It's a very personal thing. in the same way that you don't have to have the same friends. So one of the first things you got to get out of your mind and consciousness when it comes to your approach to spirituality and relationships is that you can love one another without thinking, being, doing the same thing all the time. And if you can do that, it is a true spiritual, romantic relationship. You're able to bring her flowers. She's able to make you your favorite meal. You go dancing together. You listen to go out to eat and then listen to music or a movie, and make sure you guys kiss well. Things of this nature. Then you can have a good romantic spiritual relationship. But as we see, it really has nothing to do with your own forcing each other to follow the exact same path. Because again, even when it comes to meditation and Kriya Yoga, my wife and I, we were both initiated into Kriya Yoga. We've both read the Bhagavad Gita. We've both read the Yoga Sutras. We've both studied all these things. But she has her own inner work to do, and I have my own inner work to do. And when I see her meditating in the morning, well, I go in the other room and read. When she sees me meditating in the morning and she doesn't feel like it, well, she goes somewhere else and reads, or whatever it might be, goes for a walk or something. Sometimes it happens that we end up sitting down at the exact same moment and we're meditating together, but it's not something we force that we feel we have to do together. But then again, my wife and I are both very independent people, meaning that, she has her life and I have my life, and we meet in the middle, and we don't demand that we share each other's lives. We share it as it naturally occurs. And sometimes that might mean that we spend a good 2 weeks together without even hardly leaving each other's company, except for going to work or whatever. Or it might be that for a week we hardly see each other because I've got classes to teach at night or band practice, and she's got meetings in the evening or whatever it might be. But there's this weaving together of when you're together, you're together. When you're not, you're not. So when it comes to your approach to spiritual romantic relationships, you want to avoid, if possible, type of codependence. You want to avoid, if possible, the need to feel that you both have to do the same thing, believe the same thing, think the same thing. What has to be there is mutual love and respect, and the breathing room to let a person explore whatever they want to explore. There are aspects of my spirituality which, my wife could care less about. I find them fascinating, but they're a personal thing. There are things that she's interested in that don't really interest me at all. They're just different facets of a particular approach, and we work with our spirituality at the core in the same fashion, but externally, timing might be different or whatever it might be, and that's perfectly okay. All right. So as long as you are both loving, kind, and supportive people, that is a romantic spiritual relationship. What goes on between you and your internal guru in your meditation process, what goes on between you and your spiritual mentor, is no one else's business, not even your marriage partner's business. Now, if you just enjoy talking about it and they enjoy talking about it, well, fine. It's a bit of conversation there. But if they don't, well, no worries. Talk about some other thing. Watch a TV show together. Go for a hike. Go for a walk. Find something else that you can enjoy doing together. Because we have to remember that if everything is God, if everything is divine consciousness, then anything and everything we do has an aspect of divinity to it. So going for a walk is just as holy as sitting cross-eyed in meditation on your couch. Making dinner for someone is just as holy as, hopping on the train of the next great guru or whatever it might be. So what we're learning to do is to make every aspect of our life a realization of divine consciousness. And that rolls over into our romantic relationships, where every aspect of our relationship becomes spiritual. Meaning, when I wake up early in the morning, and I know my wife isn't going to have time to make lunch or whatever it might be, well, I make her a salad for lunch, or I make her breakfast. And for me, that's part of my commitment to serving her as a spiritual being. When she's away at work, Since I work from home, if I exercise, what do? Well, I get my kettlebells out and I do maybe 30 seconds of kettlebell exercise or push-ups or whatever it might be. And then when I take my little break, I'll go and I'll clean the toilet. Or I'll clean up the kitchen. Then I'll come back, I'll do some more exercises. And then during that 1 minute rest break, I'll go do some other cleaning. So therefore, I'm exercising. And I'm also keeping the house straight, which is one thing that, believe it or not, women seem to love. So you guys out there, if you really want to improve your relationship, try to keep the place straight. Now, obviously, you can't always do that. And there are plenty of times where I probably should have kept it a little bit cleaner. And that's perfectly fine. But if you can do something that will allow you to show your love and devotion to that aspect of divinity that is your partner in the way that they appreciate, that is a spiritual thing. And it doesn't have to be that you meditate together. It doesn't mean you have to chant Om Shri Krishna, whatever it might be, together. Hare Krishna. It's about, are you able to be in a relationship such that the things that you do out of love are a form of worship, in a sense. The time that you spend together, whether it's going for a walk or going for a trail run in the woods or just going out to dinner, are you able to be fully present with that other quote, being that you are with, that reflection of yourself? If so, then that is a holy thing. That becomes a spiritual relationship. So just out of experience, you got to trust me that you're going to shoot yourself in the foot if you're looking for the spiritual partner that's going to match all of your ideals. That is a bit of an immature thing. Sometimes it will happen. I know quite a few people, not too many really, but quite a few, that they're just right on the same page with each other, religious-wise, spiritual-wise, and so on, and it works beautifully. But most of the people I know, they're always looking for that spiritual romantic partner. And then when they don't match up exactly, they move on to the next person. And they totally miss what might have been a wonderful opportunity. What might have been a wonderful opportunity for a true romantic spiritual relationship. So keep that in mind. That's the best approach to it. And I remember a story when I was at CSA one time on retreat. Mr. Davis told a story. It was about a guru who had gathered all his disciples together, and one of the students had asked, where am I going to find love? How am I going to find the right spiritual partner? And the guru just pointed to someone across the way and said, well, you should marry him. And the woman said, well, I don't even know him. Why should I marry him? And he waved her away and said, oh, you can love anybody. So it's kind of a silly way to look at it, but it's true. It does help if you do have some similar tastes, but when it comes down to love and devotion, that is something that you develop, that you cultivate. It's not something that shows up magically and stays there forever. So even as you engage in a spiritual relationship, a romantic spiritual relationship, the years are going to go by and you're going to have dry spells, you're going to have arguments, you're going to have disagreements, you're going to have wonderful times. But part of the whole process is learning to appreciate and love the person that you are with. Learning what they like, learning how to support them, learning how to grow into that kind of an individual. And from Vedic astrology, there's a chart called the Navamsha, which is the chart of marriage, or they say it's the chart of marriage. It's really about your purpose in life. But that chart, again, it's about your purpose in life, supporting your purpose and your path in life. And these Vedic seers, or when we think of Vedic times, the idea wasn't always about romance and sexuality and being the pleasure garden of your spouse all the time, although that was a great benefit if it was a possibility. But it was really about, are you able to raise a family together? Are you able to support each other on each other's paths? Are you able to let each other grow into your highest and best self? Are you able to give room for a person to do that? While remaining steady and committed and devoted throughout the whole process, even though it might be uncomfortable from time to time. That's really what a spiritual marriage and a spiritual romance is about. So you want to get out of your head all these fantasies, all these tales that you have from childhood or whatever it might be, and realize that just like anything else, love and devotion can be hard work, but the final fruit is where you understand why that hard work was so worth it. So it's not something that necessarily arises in the first 4 to 5 years of being together. That's the time period where you're kind of in your honeymoon. And if you don't really try to learn each other well, after you get past that 4 to 5 year period, you start to kind of revert back to who you are, just flat out by your innate nature. And you start to see the other person with their quirks, their idiosyncrasies. And then you start to say, gee, who did I marry? Why is this the case? So even when I've married a few people, meaning I've married them as a minister. I've only married one person in my life as a partner. But I've married people, and about 3 or 4, and they're still doing well together. So that's good, because I am an ordained minister, as I mentioned. But these days, I don't really want to agree to marry someone unless they've gone through premarital counseling. And that's not just to, say you've got problems. It's so that you become very real about who is this person that you are going to be with. Are you really going to be able to accept and love them for who they are when you find out that they actually just leave their underwear wherever it might be, when you find out that they never clean up after themselves, when you find out that your partner always forgets, certain bills to pay, whatever it might be. I'm just making stuff up here now, but are you really going to be able to love them when you find out that sometimes they have a mean streak, or that they go through depressions every now and then? If you don't go through something like premarital counseling, or if you don't really take a lot of time to be very real about who are you, how are you really going to be in the long term, then you're setting yourself up for a failed relationship. But the question might be, well, am I still able to love you knowing that you have a depressive streak every now and then? Or will I still be able to love you when I realize that I'm going to be the one that has to take care of paying all the bills? Am I going to be able to love you when I realize that you could care less about doing yard work, or that you feel this way about raising a child and I feel this way? If at the end of the day you can say yes to those things and realize that you're going to have to make some compromises for whatever it might be, then you have a great foundation to build a good, loving, lasting, romantic, spiritual relationship, spiritual marriage. If you are an immature individual, and that's fine, a lot of people are, in fact most people are, and they want to get all of their needs met through relationship. If you're that kind of a person, well, you're kind of setting yourself up to, no matter who you're with, to have a failed relationship and to be dissatisfied. One of the things when it comes to the spiritual path is learning unconditional love. Unconditional love for yourself, unconditional love for God, the way the world is, the fact that there's suffering in the world, everything's not perfect. Unconditional love for a spouse, children, friends, whatever it might be. And that is very threatening to the individualized sense of self, the ego. And that's why having this idea of a utopia or a perfect relationship is a key indicator of having too much ego. Because in order to merge with what you consider to be divine consciousness, supreme love, you have to be unconditional about it, which means when pain arises, realizing that is an aspect of God. When difficulty arises, realizing that's just a ripple in the relationship of love within your life. And if you can see it all the same with equal vision, then the ego is dissolving and you have a greater capacity to truly have a romantic spiritual relationship with someone else, as well as with the world in general. So this is all about being realistic and being mature and asking yourself, can you love someone or something unconditionally and support them on their path in life and let them support you? That's the key there. So keep these things in mind as you move forward with your spiritual practice, and realize that you have to think about relationships in this way so that they do not cause undue, consistent, obsessive stress, which detracts you from focusing on your spirituality. If you're always thinking about finding the next best partner, the person who's actually going to be able to fulfill you sexually, the person who's going to be able to, share the same hobbies as you, want to chant the same mantras as you, that's a distraction. that's a distraction. And you have to nip that in the bud very quickly, because that will be a pattern that is consistent throughout the rest of your life. So this is why when it comes to spiritual romantic relationships, it all boils down to, can you realistically love and support each other and realize that neither of you are going to be perfect, there's going to be problems, but that you are going to do the work. You're going to be committed to letting them follow their own spirituality, whatever that might be. You follow yours. They do their work. You do your work. You meet in the middle when it's appropriate. And you share that time and that love and that presence when it's appropriate. And let life be what it is. So keep this in mind. And I think it'll help out quite a bit to improve your capacity for relationships, spiritually speaking, as well as remove distractions from your life that revolve around relationships and weird ideas you might have around relationships.